Have you ever looked at the price of a prescription drug and just thought, how? I mean, how is that number even possible? It's a world that often feels super confusing, kind of secretive, and let's be honest, pretty staggering. Okay, so let's dive in and try to make some sense of it all. Right, this is not a typo. $2,125,000. That was the real launch price for a single dose of Zolgensma. It's a one-time gene therapy for a devastating condition called spinal muscular atrophy. Still, wow. And that really gets us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? What on earth goes into creating a price tag that high? Is it some simple calculation, or is there something way more complex happening behind the scenes? Now, the answer you'll almost always hear, the standard industry line, is that these prices are absolutely necessary to pay for the huge, high-risk costs of research and development. And to be fair, something like 90% of drugs that even make it into clinical trials, they never get approved. But when you start digging into the data, that argument gets a little more complicated. A major study in the BMJ found that over a 20-year period, the world's biggest drug companies actually spent a lot more on stuff like marketing and admin than they did on R&D. So while R&D is for sure a massive cost, it's clearly not the only big cost driving the business.
So what's really going on here? Well, the truth is, there's no single global formula for setting a drug price. What we really have is a patchwork of totally different systems, and each one has its own rules, its own key players, and its own priorities. To get drug pricing, you have to get these different worlds.
Let's start in the United States, which has this really unique system that's built around these powerful and, frankly, often invisible middlemen. And these middlemen are called pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs for short. You can think of them as giant purchasing agents for the healthcare world. They manage the drug plans for tens of millions of people, which gives them enormous leverage to negotiate with both the drug companies and the pharmacies. So here's how it all works, and it's actually pretty clever. Imagine there are two competing cholesterol drugs. A PBM might go to company A and say, hey, pay us a massive rebate, and we'll put your drug on our preferred list, our formulary. Then they turn around and tell all their members, you'll only pay a $10 copay for drug A, but it's going to be $50 for drug B. It creates this powerful system that just funnels millions of prescriptions toward the drug that gives the PBM the best deal. And this whole system is what creates one of the most misunderstood things in U.S. drug pricing, the gross-to-net bubble. That shocking list price you see in the news, that's the gross price. But because of all those rebates and negotiations, big insurers almost never pay that price. They pay the much lower net price. The problem is, if you're uninsured or have a high deductible plan, you might get stuck paying something a lot closer to that crazy sticker price. Okay, now let's hop across the pond to Europe and see a totally different model. Instead of these negotiations between private companies, most European governments step right in and ask a fundamentally different question. What is this new drug actually worth to our health system? And they answer that question using a process called a Health Technology Assessment, or HTA. The easiest way to think about it is like a government-run Consumer Reports for new medicines. An HTA agency will rigorously analyze all the data on a new drug to figure out how much better it is, if at all, than what's already being used. Just look at France and Germany, two of Europe's biggest markets. They both use this HTA process, but they have their own rating scales. In France, a drug that gets the lowest rating, ASMRV, means it offers no improvement, and its price will probably be discounted. In Germany, it's pretty similar. If a drug is found to have no added benefit, its price gets capped. But if a drug shows a major benefit in either country, the government is willing to sit down and negotiate a much higher premium price. So the bottom line is this. In these systems, the price isn't just about R&D costs or secret rebates. It is directly tied to a very public government assessment of its clinical value. A great HTA rating is basically the golden ticket to getting a premium price. Okay, so we've got the rebate-driven system in the US and the value-driven system in Europe. So how does a drug company play this complex global game? Well, it often boils down to a huge strategic trade-off between price and speed. This is the multi-billion-dollar question that pharmaceutical execs wrestle with. You've got this amazing new drug. Do you try to launch it everywhere at once? Do you pick your markets really carefully? And how does the price you want to charge affect that whole decision? Now, this graph might look a little complicated, but it tells a really interesting story. On the bottom, you've got the launch price from low to high, And on the side, you have the launch window, basically how long it takes to get the drug into a country. Notice that U-shape. If you price a drug too low or you price it way too high, it actually takes longer to launch. The fastest path to market, the very bottom of that U, is at a moderately high price. That's the strategic sweet spot. But what if your goal isn't speed? What if your goal is just to get the absolute highest price possible? Well, this graph flips things around. Now the time delay is on the bottom and the price is on the side. And look at that inverted U. To hit the absolute peak price, the data suggests a company might have to wait over 7 times years to launch in some countries. Why? Because that delay gives them time to collect more real-world proof that their drug works and negotiate from a position of maximum strength. And that gets right to the heart of it. It's this core strategic trade-off. A drug company has to choose. Do we go for a fast, wide launch at a good price? Or do we strategically delay entering some countries to fight for the highest possible price, squeezing every last dollar out of a few key markets, even if it means less access for everyone else? Now, these systems have been running this way for decades. But right now, the ground is starting to shift underneath everything. The world of drug pricing is right in the middle of a massive transformation. What we're seeing is a kind of convergence. Systems are borrowing ideas from each other. And the biggest change by far is that the U.S., through the Inflation Reduction Act, has now given Medicare the power to directly negotiate drug prices for the first time ever. That's a concept borrowed straight out of the European playbook. But, and this is a huge but, the way the U.S. is doing it has a really critical detail. The law created 2 different clocks. Small molecule drugs, traditional pills, are only protected from these negotiations for 9 years after they're approved. But biologics, which are more complex injectables and infusions, they're protected for a full 13 years. This 4-year difference is now known as the small molecule penalty. And the impact was immediate. Think about it. Why would a company invest billions in developing a pill with only a 9-year protected window when it could invest in a biologic and get 13 years? And the data is already showing the shift. One analysis in 2024 found that since the law passed, new clinical trials for cancer drugs that are pills have dropped by over 43%. The investment is literally fleeing from pills and flooding into biologics. And this is the great unintended consequence of the policy. A law that was designed to lower drug costs has accidentally created a powerful financial incentive against developing new medicines in their most common, most accessible, and most patient-friendly form. A simple pill. It just goes to show how even well-intentioned changes can have really complex and sometimes counterintuitive effects. So all of this brings us to one final question. As these global systems keep borrowing from each other, are we actually heading toward a simpler, more rational global system for pricing drugs? Or are we just trading one set of complexities for another, creating a future that is just as confusing, only in brand new ways?